Good evening. I can't seem to be getting any video here. And that's a little concerning to me. But if I can get some audio, that would be great. So let's see if I can hear myself. Oh, there we go. Not quite sure what that means, but I'll take it. Anyway, hello, welcome to the Sometimes Drunk podcast. I'm Rebecca, your host. Ooh, sorry, I have already been pre-drinking a little. But I'm Becca, your host, and it'll just be me this evening. Miche went home in Croatia. She went from college back home for the weekend, and internet quality isn't quite that great. Plus family. So, I figured I'd go back to something that I'm actually a little bit surprised that I still have fans for, considering I haven't done it in a while. And that is horror podcast, or horror narration, actually. For a short time, I say a short time, but it's actually been about a year or so. I was a narrator for the No Sleep podcast and for Chilling Tales for Dark Nights. I feel like my best performance was for the story Booth World Industries as Samantha, the operator for Booth World Industries. So, because of that, tonight, I will be reading some creepypastas. Let me see if I can hear myself. It appears I cannot hear myself. Oh, wait. This is somewhat unusual. I do not like it. It shows that nobody's viewing also, so nobody can confirm whether or not this is disastrous. Either way, I think I shall continue. What's wrong with me today? I forgot to start up Audacity even. I am already losing it. It's a lot easier to keep track of everything when you have someone else to keep track of, honestly. So being alone is a little weird. Anyway, if you have any questions at all while I'm reading, or if you have any requests, do let me know. The plan right now is to read what I have linked in the description. And after that, who knows? Between stories, who knows? It might take us to the end of the hour and it might not. Anyway, the first story that I'll be reading tonight is Found an Unsolved Case File at Work and Something's Not Adding Up by SamSam07 on Reddit. Okay. Following the family line, I'm the lead detective in our rural town of Julinsburg. My father was before me, and his father before him. It's not nearly as interesting as it sounds, being a detective. At least not in my town. It's more paperwork than anything. My office is dark and cramped, old wood paneling on the walls, and the smell of musk and old leather. Maybe mold, too. There's never any crime. Everyone here knows everyone. Neighbors leave their doors unlocked, kids play and walk together all over town. No news spreads slower than a day or two at most. We were all real close. Days stay pretty standard, but I won't bore you with too much detail. Basically, wake up, grab a cup of coffee, take a dump, head to work, more coffee, paperwork, and maybe joking around with a few deputies about some idiotic excuse to get out of a parking ticket. Today I woke up feeling productive, for some reason, and decided it would be a pretty good day to go through some old files and clean them out, make room for some new ones. No one around the department likes to clean, so those food-stained, yellowing documents have been sitting there for years, maybe more. I'm no better. My eyes catch them every single day, yet I continue to avoid them like my life depended on it. Hell, if I worked slowly enough, I could stretch it over my entire shift. As boring and repetitive as it was, time seemed to pass by quicker than usual as I filed old, closed cases and made room for the more current ones. We're talking stacks upon stacks of parking tickets, petty theft, vandalism in the smallest degree, court shit, nothing investigative or even worth batting an eye at, really. And then a particular manila folder. It wasn't marked green. We mark all the closed and completed files with a green Sharpie, which was odd. In a town this small and quaint, having any unsolved cases was extremely out of the ordinary, and even more weird. I'd never even heard of this specific case. I've worked here for years and have been a member of the town my entire life, and at no point did I ever hear anyone speak of it. The first page was a newspaper headline. Serial murderers plague town. Police are struggling to find any solid leads. Reading on, I found out that three men were found murdered in their own homes. No fingerprints, no footprints, not a single drop of bodily fluid was left behind, apart from the victim's blood. There were no hair fibers, no fingernail marks. There were no hair fibers, no fingernail marks. Whoever had committed the murders left without a trace. And I say that it was one person because the cases had one common factor: the way the victims were killed. It's characteristic of a serial killer to have a specific killing method, their legacy, if you will. In this instance, the similarities are as followed. All three victims are male, various ages, heights, and wealth. They were all murdered in their homes. They all had their mouths stretched so wide their jaws were snapped. Their eyes had been messily scooped from the sockets and shoved deep into the men's throats. Their arms, legs, and torso were littered with some strange markings, all of them sliced with surgical precision. There was no note on what language they could possibly be in. The new few pages were printouts of photos of the crime scene. It was horrifying. Now, I've seen blood, and a lot of it. So, when I'm looking at a picture, completely in awe of the sheer amount that's plastered over the walls, sheets, and floor, you know it's gruesome. With my stomach churning, I flipped over the pictures, planning to continue reading the file for when I had more time to sit down and to do some research. Plus, if I looked at the photos any longer, I was scared I would lose my coffee from this morning. Fucking sick. I spent the rest of my day finishing up what I had started, signing my name on a few documents, and clocked out 10 minutes early. While walking out, I decided to stop by the front desk. Amanda works there, young and new, but surely sweet and very passionate about being an officer one day. Have you heard about the unsolved murders from a few years back? I mean, about 10 years or so? She said, squinting a bit and furrowing her brow. Not really. Maybe no one talks about it because it's still an open case. Dunno. I'd think that'd be even more of a reason to talk about it. How can you solve a case if you pretend it doesn't exist? I couldn't tell ya, she shrugged. Maybe it's gone cold. Has been 10 years after all. You know, it's hard to solve anything old like that. Trails go cold, bunch of dead ends. But 3 men were violently murdered, I said to myself more than Amanda. We owe it to the family to keep trying. The document felt heavy in my hand as I imagined all the families who still have no closure after losing a loved one. It would kill me not to know who took my family member away and to think the police had given up on them. That's not what we stand for. Amanda gave me a nod and an understanding smile. Look into it, then. Don't get discouraged, though. The killer's probably long gone and we both know it. She wasn't lying. Yeah, I knew it was probably going to be a case that wouldn't get solved. It had just been too long. But if I could put my skills to something like this, I do believe it would mean more to the family than if I never gave it a single chance. Sorry, needed a small drink there. Okay. I didn't even bother to eat when I got back to my place, just throwing myself on the couch with my cat, my laptop, and that case file. After the photos, there were a few police notes, all handwritten. It explained how the first suspects were the men's wives, being as they were the only ones home, apart from the children, when the crimes were committed. Plus, the spouse is always the first suspect. They didn't record any conversations or type out any transcripts. But they gave each woman a chance to write out a statement. Below are all 3 statements the wives left. Mrs. Hagen: I have no idea what happened. We ate dinner, watched TV like we always do. Trevor felt exhausted from work and decided to head to bed early that night. Like around 8, I believe. It was pretty quiet for the remainder of the night until I just went upstairs to grab something from the master bedroom. That's when I saw it, and I'm sorry I couldn't. It was just completely gruesome. I probably couldn't conjure up a scene like that in my worst nightmare. Blood was everywhere. The sheets, the walls, the carpet, everywhere. The whole room smelled like death and copper. It took days before I could speak. I was just too traumatized. I never even heard him scream. Well, Mrs. Tremble, well, it was the weekend, so me and my husband were off work and our son, Michael, was off school. We spent the day shopping for groceries and then cleaning our attic. We'd been planning on moving. Derek just didn't seem the same after he'd stopped talking to his close friends. I asked him what was wrong, but he always brushed it off and changed the subject. Anyway, we put things in boxes and made some space for any additional ones. Derek told me he was going to grab some blankets from the room and told Michael to hang back with me and help lift things. Of course, Mikey was young and couldn't lift more than a few pounds, but Derek made him feel like a real man of the house. He was such a good father. After about 30 minutes, I got a little confused on what was taking so long. So I went to check on him with Mikey in tow. So, yes, our son did see his father's mutilated body. His scream still echoes in my head every day. I don't even want to think about what I saw. It didn't even look like my husband anymore.
Mrs. Mason: as much as I'd like to forget that night, it's still so vivid in my head. It's like it just happened yesterday. I guess something like that haunts you for the rest of your life, you know? I lost my husband while he was just one room over. Our marriage had been rocky for the past year. He withdrew from me. He was constantly gone. I remember a few years back when he would come home with the biggest smile and fingernail markings on his back. I was so sure he was having an affair. I was desperate to make it work. Nothing seemed to help. All he did was lock himself in our guest room, and I'd hardly see him. That room was right next to mine. Well, ours. You see what I'm saying? There was maybe a foot of wall separating us. How could I not have heard it? No thumping, no screaming, nothing. It was dead silent apart from my TV. The window wasn't open, no intruder. It's like something tore him apart from the inside, or in a split second. I still don't understand. I don't think I ever will.
Now, there's a number of things about these statements that I find extremely unsettling. The most being this: none of the wives ever heard any screams or any sign of struggle, despite them being all within a definite hearing range. Either the killer was able to muffle the men enough to prevent any sound, highly unlikely, or the wives are lying. Additionally, one of the women stated she checked on the husband only 30 minutes after he was alone. Sorry. Now that means the killer had to Either the killer was able Sorry. Now, that means the killer had to overpower the man after breaking in without a sound, kill him, and carve over 50 markings with the sharpest scalpel on earth, all in 30 minutes. It just doesn't seem to quite add up. And when I say these markings were done so precisely, I mean scarily. Like they were carved with no harsh edges, all of them perfectly clean and equally as deep. I could only hope the victims weren't alive when this was happening. The more I read, the more confused I get. I do have a plan, though. Tomorrow, I'm going to set up interviews with the women who were married to the victims, and also the child who was present when his mother found the body. I'm going to see what they can remember. Then, I'm going to go into the evidence room and dig up anything else I can find on the matter. I know for a fact one of the homes had a shitty surveillance camera, and even if a little, it should help. I'm going to revisit the crime scenes and write down, photograph, and document what I find. I don't have any set motive or suspects yet, but hopefully I will by the end of the week. If you'd like me to update, I absolutely will. If you have any ideas on where else I could look, I'm all ears. Let's find the monster that kills these men. And that was the end of that one. Clearly a part one kind of situation. And I was glad that I was able to do the different voice for each of the the wives. So I'm sorry, I picked a bit of dry skin off of my lip in the middle there, so my lip's bleeding now. And hello, single watcher. I'm glad to have you with me. I can just go on to reading the second one in a moment or two, because I would like to go on with that. Also, I guess between my readings, I would like to say a few words about my experience in narrating. Ooh. I'm so sorry, my lip is quite insistently bleeding. The thing about the next one is Carol's divorce. There was actually... Oh dear. Oh dearie, dearie me. I appear to be having internet troubles. Single viewer. Dearie, dearie me. Oh dear, oh dear. This is not good. Well, technical difficulties are to be expected every now and again, I suppose. Let's have a look-see, look-see. Okay, my stream health seems to be good. Anyway, the fun thing about this is the next one that I'm planning on reading, Carol's divorce. I found that there is a bunch of stories about this Aunt Carol. And I was reading them earlier, and I had to decide on which one I thought had the creepiest vibes to it. And all of them were, in a way, they were creepy, but not quite scary. But I do like the ones that are subtly unsettling. I like saying that, subtly unsettling. It's more apparent when I take my drinks right now, because I'm all alone. All on my own. Anyway, so, second viewer. Hello, second viewer. You caught me in my little break between stories. Don't worry, I'll get back to it. You don't have to leave immediately. because I'm not doing good. In fact, I'm not even drunk enough yet. Or drunk enough. I know we're called sometimes drunk, but I would like to be always drunk for these. Anyway, my experience with horror narration was actually really good. When I narrated for the No Sleep podcast, I just want to say that David is an extraordinarily wonderful gentleman with a sometimes heavy Canadian accent. But he does nice. He does good work. He's got a good voice on him. My friend who I had on cast last week was Super Lexi, also known as Alexis Bristow, on the No Sleep podcast, and she is wonderful. I remember that I started on No Sleep around the 3rd season, and not shortly actually after starting narrating on No Sleep, I was requested by Craig of Chilling Tales to try out. And the thing is, I have some problems with depression. So sometimes I drop off the face of the earth, and I feel a little too ashamed to begin talking to people again. And so whether or not they feel I'm still qualified or if I'm still welcome, I want to establish myself and do better so that I feel like I can approach them again. And I'd say that maybe this podcast is a bit like that. It's a bit of redemption for myself, I think. I also want to keep being good at narrating. And that's what had me so surprised recently when I announced that me and my buddy Miche were going to be doing a podcast. People asked me if it was horror related. I've recently had people telling me they were fans of my horror work, and I don't think I've put out anything horror related in about a year. And these people were suddenly coming out of the woodwork. And I very much appreciate it. And you know what? I'd like to give back to that. And that's exactly why I'm doing tonight's solo cast, with a little bit of No Sleep. So, to get back to things, our next story is Carol's Divorce by Demons Dance Alone. Also to note, everything I'm reading is linked in the description of tonight's cast. I apologize for occasional burping as I mix my vodka with, the last thing before I begin reading. Tonight's drink mix, as it always is Diet Dr. Pepper and peach vodka. I'd say it makes a very good mix. Usually I go with plain vodka in my Diet Doc, but I've switched over to peach because it gives a nice fruity flavor. The thing about Dr. Pepper is it already has the bitter aftertaste of alcohol, so you can load it up way more than you can any other soda. Alrighty then. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to make them. Otherwise, here I go. Carol's Divorce by Demons Dance Alone. Today, I'd like to tell you about Aunt Carol's divorce. Kevin was a little over 8 when she split from her husband, Leland, and instead of celebrating sweet, sweet freedom, he went through unimaginable torment via his mother. So with all I've said about Carol, you'd probably think her husband, Leland, was a better person. You'd be wrong. Carol would only ever have married 2 kinds of people: a deaf-blind, bed-bound saint with a bottomless bank account, or someone as scummy as her. Leland was the second. Wasn't much of a dad, wasn't much of a husband. His only saving grace was his mother, who did the bulk of Kevin's care. He was rich, so none of us thought Carol would ever leave him. We underestimated her. Carol randomly decided one day that Leland wasn't deferential enough for her and threatened divorce. This was on his office phone in the middle of the day. By the time he got home that night, Leland had divorce papers to throw on the coffee table right in front of her. Carol tried backpedaling, offering counseling or second honeymoon instead. But I guess even guys like Leland get tired of throwing money down the black pit that is Aunt Carol, so he pressed for separation. Leland brought a lot of assets to the marriage. He had money, property, stock options, the works. Carol had exactly one asset, and no, I'm not talking about her crazy. Kevin. I've said before, Carol wasn't much of a mother. Well, as soon as it looked like she might have not... as soon as it looked like she might not have her son anymore, Carol decided she wanted him. Unfortunately for her, Kevin was with his grandmother that day. Carol showed up and demanded her son. They were moving to Mexico right this minute. And yes, that's exactly what she said to Kevin's grandmother. She was actually dumbfounded when the old woman slammed the door in her face. Of course it didn't end there. This is Carol we're talking about. Leland decided to keep Kevin around. Not to protect him from Carol, oh no. But because he wanted to establish residency prior to the custody hearing so he wouldn't have to give his wife so much money. While Carol dropped off of the radar for a while, Leland kept Kevin under tight surveillance. Which is why it came as such a shock when Kevin was kidnapped from school right in broad daylight. Kevin was under strict orders to wait for his grandmother's car before he even thought about stepping outside. He was walking across the schoolyard, maybe 50 feet from the car, when some random burly dude ran past and scooped him up. They got into a blue van with taped up plates that was idling at the corner with its side door already open. The whole thing from grab to getaway lasted about 15 seconds. Totally planned. Kevin's grandmother made a police report, but without the license plate, there wasn't a whole lot to go on. That's where our family comes in. You may have noticed from previous stories, but there's a real strong deal with it yourself mentality running through us. Sometimes it's harmful, like when you've decided to euthanize a mugwump, but sometimes it's good, like in this instance. Uncle Bob couldn't just let his nephew disappear without doing anything. So he enlisted Uncle Craig and my dad to drive over and grill Granny for details. The old lady was taken aback by how not crazy they were compared to Carol, and gave them all the info she could remember. Bob got the idea to drive around just to see if anything matched up that description. Well, he must have pleased some deity that day because they spotted a blue van outside this car shop. Ugh. They weren't sure it was the right one until a guy came out, toweling the grease off his hands. Granny confirmed it was the kidnapper. After they dropped her off back home, they went back to the shop to confront the guy. My dad said it was his idea to ask the guy about a quote. That got him close enough to the car that my uncles could jump him. They grabbed either arm and slammed him up against the car, screaming about their nephew. At the first question about Kevin, the guy blew up. They could all fuck off or he'd call the cops. Drug dealer thugs weren't about to intimidate him. Ah, yes, that old chestnut. Bob said they weren't drug dealers. They were the kid's uncles, and if he didn't fess up, he would be eating his own teeth. I can imagine the guy's face in the moment when that light switch first flipped. They weren't drug dealers? No. They weren't sent to kidnap Carol and bury her in a shallow grave? The only one who wanted to see Carol at that point was a divorce lawyer. Dad said the guy just got pale and started babbling. Carol had told him that her ex-con hubby had gotten out of prison and wanted to take the son that she had raised by herself just so he could use him to run drugs. I think they didn't report the guy to the cops because they felt sorry for him. Carol had fed him this long line of bullshit that he'd scarfed down like a Thanksgiving turkey. Dad promised not to turn him in if he just told them where he brought the kid. The guy stammered that he'd dropped him off in an empty field outside of town. Carol hadn't been there, but a withered old guy in camo gear was, as per Carol's instruction. He gave Kevin over to the old man. The guy apologized. He hadn't wanted to do it. Kevin was a nice kid, and he actually talked to his captors like they were human beings. But Carol had promised that she'd be along shortly to take Kevin with her. Of course, that never happened. Bob told Leland about the field. Leland got the cops to organize a search party. The field turned up completely empty, not even a breadcrumb to be found. Uncle Craig speculated that she'd given Kevin to some crazy survivalist, and he probably knew how to hide someone away really well. Sorry. Of course, the person who could have enlightened everyone, Carol, was nowhere to be found until she called Leland and requested a custody meeting. Anyone else in any other family would have been met with cuffs as soon as she walked in the door. But a combination of Leland's apathy and my family's closed offness meant that the only ones in the room that day were Carol, Leland, and Leland's lawyer. Carol was smirking when she came in. Leland's lawyer, former lawyer, I should say, told me that she didn't even look mildly upset about her son. She wanted to talk terms first. Leland said, "Okay, sure, you can have this much alimony." He probably lowballed her, but Carol snapped up the amount. And Kevin would see her. No, Carol cut in. She got Kevin. She got full custody and the money. At this point, both men were gaping at her, and Carol just sat there, smirking. Did Carol know anything about her son's whereabouts? Smirk. Shrug. Because if she did and didn't turn it over, she would be legally barred from custody. Well then, maybe Kevin would just stay lost then, wouldn't he? The lawyer said he had never seen anything like it in all his years of mediation. A woman so emotionally removed from her offspring that she would abandon him to a stranger out of greed. Leland caved. It wasn't the money, really, or his son. He just couldn't stand Carol getting so much over him. Carol smiled and took the terms, saying she'd be in touch. And right as she stepped out of that office, she was confronted by her brothers and brother-in-law. They were picking up Kevin right now. Carol frowned for the first time that day. Couldn't it wait? She had an appointment. Bob got right in her face and told her that if they didn't get Kevin, he would tell Dad that she sold her own son. Carol whined against it, but they physically pulled her into the car and went driving. They went out to that field. When they asked how they'd get Kevin back, Carol smirked. Who knew where he was? Maybe they'd look and get lucky. Dad said he had to try very hard not to hit her then. Carol got out of the car and walked off into the field. Dad said they tried to watch where she went, but somehow she just vanished as she walked away. They waited for half an hour. Finally, when they were contemplating sending one of them back to the car to get cops, Carol came out of the field from a completely different direction than the one she'd been traveling, walking like she was casually strolling to the store. Completely alone. Dad said she opened the passenger door, offhandedly said they'd probably want to look in that part of the field, and then got in. The men spread out and searched the field. They found Kevin lying on a tarp in the middle of a stand of mullein. The poor kid was shirtless and shivering. He had tree branches strapped to his hands and feet, and 3 lines of deer blood painted down his face. Dad said when they reached him, Kevin flinched back like he didn't even know who they were. Bob took his coat off and wrapped him in it, then picked Kevin up. Carol was right in the car where they'd left her, looking irked at the wait. They could just drop her off at the law offices, then she could pick up her car. No, my dad said. Kevin needed to go to a hospital. Carol made her patented cat butt face. But she was late. Kevin could sleep it off at home. Bob said Kevin was staying with them that night, and possibly indefinitely. Carol got a sly look and said he'd probably get lost again if he didn't live with her. She had custody. She had rights. The men exchanged a look. Literally the last thing this kid needed was to stay with Carol. But, well, she had them between a rock and a hard place. No one knew better than them how badly Carol could fuck up their lives. They weren't going to win this battle, but they might win the war. They argued her down, dropping her off to get her car while they took Kevin to the hospital. They checked him for all the usual things, even sexual assault, which came up negative, thank God. Kevin was slightly malnourished and had suffered from exposure at one point. In addition to the deer blood on his face, fat mixed with ash had been smeared on his body in a few places. The reason he hadn't talked to any of them so far was discovered when they opened his mouth and found a series of knife cuts on his tongue. Once they made sure that Kevin was mostly okay, they made the long drive back to Carol's. The whole time, Bob kept apologizing to Kevin for making him go back to his mother, telling him he could call anyone in the family at any time for help. My dad said his heart broke when Kevin went up that walk, and Carol just yelled for him to come in. She didn't want to get up. She didn't want to get up and open the door. Carol was floating on clouds of smug. She had her money. She had her son. She had everything. Until about 2 months later, when she got bored and dropped Kevin off with his grandmother again. Granny could have called the cops, raised a stink, but I think she knew in her heart that it would only end badly. Carol kept getting child support, and Kevin ended up in a mostly suitable household. It was a win-win all around. I was only a kid when this happened, so most of this is secondhand. Kevin never talked about what happened to him during that time, where he was. Whenever someone asked him about it, he just froze up with a terrified look on his face, so we stopped asking. To be honest, I would have embraced the chance to have nothing to do with my mother after a fiasco like that. But Kevin's been reeling in the wake of Carol's disappearance, kind of seesawing between grief and anger. I think the poor guy misses the relationship he should have had with his mother rather than the woman herself. As for me, I say ding dong, the witch is gone. That's all of that one. I have to say, it's really nice to, well, okay, someone just left. Alright, that's cool. That's nice. No. I know what the score is. You're just here to hear the, narration, if anything. I would like it if I'd be able to reblog, my post again. Usually I do that kind of stuff while I have another person talking. But actually, I really miss doing the horror narration quite a bit, and I've been wanting to do it again. Oh, okay. Who likes talking to themselves? Becca likes talking to herself. This is what happens when I do a solo cast. So what do we have next on the bill? Okay, this is weird. This is concerning. If Tumblr's down, then that means that nobody saw my post. Which means that I'm talking to dead air right now. But the thing is, everything is archived, so it should all just keep, Oh! That was weird. There's 2 people here now. Well, if you came here from Tumblr or from Twitter, the best thing that you could do for me is retweet or reblog, but I do appreciate having you here now. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them to the side in the chat. If there's any requests that you have, please leave them in the chat because I am paying attention. Because I'm by myself right now. Oh, this week's, well, it looks it has a very poor resolution to me this week. This week's picture is drawn by me. And it's a picture of me. Because it's only me here. Now, who's ready for an inaccurate Russian accent? Because I'm reading Soviet pasta for this last 20 minutes, I suppose. Soviet pasta, for those who don't know, are creepypasta rewritten to be, I guess, parody in the Soviet Russia times. So here we go. Bad accent approaching. Let's see. You come home from a hard day of work at glorious Soviet tractor factory. Enter lounge and drink vodka. Cat sit on top of kitchen table, stare at you. Stupid cat, you say. You look just like Comrade Stalin fat ugly wife. Early next morning, KGB kick down front door and take you to Siberian gulag for outrageous slur against Comrade Stalin beautiful wife. In glorious Soviet motherland, even cat can be trained to report owner for spread discontent and tell lie about senior party members. Cat receive Order of Lenin medal and senior position in KGB. You receive 30-year hard labor sentence at Soviet re-education camp. Life is just and fair under our beloved leader Stalin. I love this shit, man. It's the funniest. Short time in previous. Man is walk down road because he not afford autocar when he sees top-notch Soviet autocar approach from rear of him. He salute car to attract attention for transport and autocar ceases moving. Man run to passenger side of vehicle and open door. When door is opened, skeleton ejects from autocar. Body being dumped by KGB agent for insolence against great communist party. Such is life in Russia. Thank you for sticking with me while I start doing this in such a bad Russian accent. Next we have Pocket Watch is break. Walking home one night, you notice all candle in personal shack are lit. You finish vodka bottle as you approach door. House is empty, and you made sure not to feed guard dog, but candles still go out. You check Soviet pocket watch, small hand on 4, big hand on 1. You realize that you soon be late for glorious unpaid labor at mighty Soviet factory. At factory, you find letter on floor. It is signed to you, from you. You open letter, wonder where you are learn writing. Inside reads, the out for watch. You look at pocket watch, big hand on 4, little one on 1. You look at note again. 4th and 1st words have swapped places. Watch out for watch. You look at pocket watch again. You realize watch is broken and get it fixed. You also decide to cut back on vodka, so do not send letter to yourself anymore. Such is life in Moscow. Oh, I like this next one just because it's funny to me. Degenerate murderer on television. You are home to watch Pravda on television about degenerate murderer who is on the loose. You look out the window door to beat field, and you notice man standing in snow. He look like photo on television, and he smile at you. You gulp vodka. Picking up phone to your right hand and dialing local militia precinct commissar. Back out the glass you look, pressing phone to ear. Notice he now closer to you. You drink more vodka in shock. No footprints in snow. It was reflection, you dullard! Your apartment is bulldozed down to make way for glorious tractor factory. I think that's my favorite line from any of them. That's my favorite ending to any of them. Alright. Once I hear story about girl in Chaplin. She was asleep in her bed when she feel lick on her hand. She thinks it is dog and goes to sleep. Next morning, she finds note on dresser with dead head of dog. It says capitalists can lick too. She screams. Father comes upstairs, takes off belt and beats her. Moral of story is daughter should not yell in house like peasant. House is not Siberian pigsty. I worry daughter will never find a good Russian husband. Mirror is capitalist. Legend is being going like this. You are entering bathroom and standing in front of mirror, turning candles off, and while being in front of mirror, spinning rapidly. You chanting Leon Trotsky, Leon Trotsky, Leon Trotsky, Leon Trotsky several times while catching glimpses of self in mirror. It is said that eventually you will be seeing image of Leon Trotsky in mirror. Upon exiting bathroom, you are being arrested by KGB for believing in existence of Leon Trotsky, whom party has proven has never existed. Okay. Let's see. What's next? Okay. Next is... Sorry. Next is me drinking some more. We have 15 minutes of this left. If you're tired of me reading Soviet pasta in an inaccurate Russian accent, and have any suggestions or questions or want me to talk about anything in particular, please let me know in the chat. I will be paying attention as there is nothing in the chat at the moment. If there are any technical difficulties right now, I do apologize for that, and I have no idea what's happening if there are. Either way, I'm having fun tonight, and this will be in the archive, so if you're, if you've missed my inaccurate Russian accent so far, you can go back and look at that when this stream is done. I'm not reading this one. Let's see. Alright, this one's one of my favorites. Hotel Red Eye Woman. Hotel Red Eye Woman. I check into a small hotel a few kilometers from Kiev. It is late. I am tired. I tell woman at desk I want room. She tells me room number and give me key. But one more thing, comrade. There is one room without number, and always look. Don't even peek in there. I take key and go to room to sleep. Night comes and I hear trickling of water. It comes from room across. I cannot sleep, so I open door. It is coming from room with no number. I pound on door. No response. I look in keyhole. I see nothing except red. Water still trickling. I go down to front desk to complain. By the way, who is in that room? She look at me and begin to tell story. There was woman in there, murdered by her husband. Skin all white except her eyes, which were red. I tell her I don't give shit. Stop the water trickling or give me refund. She gave me 100 ruble credit and free breakfast. Such is life in Moscow. Nightmare on fire burning. You wake up and have breakfast. At breakfast, you read Pravda. News section is saying you are dying one day ago in chemical fire. Such is life in Moscow. Devachka moya bad dream. Father, I had a bad dream. You take sip of vodka and roll over. You are staring at clock tower on Sobranaya Square. It is 3:23. Go back to sleep. It is much work tomorrow. No, father. Familiar warm buzz of vodka starts to sink in. Can barely make out Devochka's pale form in the darkness. Why is that, Devochka Maya? Because in dream, when I was about to go back to sleep, the thing wearing mother's skin sat up. You pause, face your daughter, and look her intensely. Figure behind you begin to stir. Don't talk that way about your brother. It is not his fault we have no money for coats. Such is life in Moscow. Okay, that one honestly is my favorite. I just love that. Don't talk about your brother that way. Also, I like saying stuff like Devochka Moya. Oh, is Devochka Moya 2 words? Or is it 1 word? Because in the title, Devochka Moya is 1 word, but when he's saying, why is that Devochka Moya? Lady Gorbachev. In Russia, coffin has a pipe for air. The bell with string. If man is true Soviet, he does not die. When buried, yells for undertaker and rings bell.
Bell rings. Is no wind. Undertaker asks, Are you Lady Gorbachev? Voice says, Da! Born winter 1927? Da! Gravestone says died 20 February 1957? Yet I am still living. I'm sorry, but it is August. In June, ground will thaw. You must wait for June. And woman is true Soviet. She waits for June. This is my favorite. Lenin statue. Mother and father get little tired from building communism, so they want to go to Moscow to buy vodka. They call most trusted babysitter. When babysitter arrives, children already sleep in beds. Babysitter just sits around and makes sure everything good with children. Later that night, babysitter gets bored and goes to read Marx, but she cannot read downstairs because there is no electricity. Parents don't want children reading Marx all night long, so she calls parents and asks if she can get candles to read Marx in their room. Of course, the parents say it's okay, but babysitter has one final request. She asks if she could cover up the Lenin statue outside the bedroom window with blanket or cloth, because it makes her nervous. Phone line is silent for a moment, and father who say, Take children and get out of house. We will call militia. We do not have Lenin statue. Militia find all 3 house occupants dead because KGB killed them for trying to cover Lenin statue. Then militia arrest parents for not having Lenin statue. Such is life in Moscow. Again, this is me saying, if you have anything to say, any comments, any questions, or anything like that, please do leave them in the chat. I'm having a nice drink here again. Not nearly well. You know what? It's I guess I'm starting to flub my lines a bit while I'm reading these in the Russian accent. I think I'm rolling my R's a little too much, not vowing my woos very much, or wooing my v's enough. Can you imagine if Cronus and Aridin talked in a Russian accent? That shit be crazy or what? Any Slavic, actually. I'm Polish. But in the spirit of that, I'll have my drink. I don't know what they say in Russia, but na zdrowie. Anybody watching is encouraged to drink as well. Actually, I'd like to take this point to pause and say that as a voice actor, one of the things that has been hardest for me is trying to get a handle on accents. But one of the things that I learned, or that I believe, is less is more, kind of in a way. Because, like, when you put on an accent, a lot of people put on an accent very heavy, you know? But there's, like, very small sort of language markers that you can work with, and one of the first ones is recognizing the parts of your accent that there are, you know? As someone from northeastern America, New England, I'm from New Jersey, of course, I slur my words together a little bit, like the typical, I don't know, or just like, I gotcha, or just anything. It's like, I gotta go, I gotta do this. For me, some of the other things, some filler words that we have is real quick, you know, like, those words. There's some good filler words, like, I'm gonna go do this real quick, or I just need to get into that drawer real quick, you know, stuff like that. And I just did it, another filler word, you know. But there's 2 distinct things that I've noticed in doing a northeastern sort of accent, like, at least where I'm from in New Jersey, is all your O's sound like A's, like orange, sorry, mountain. And the other one, which you can see in the word mountain, is we don't pronounce T's in the middles of words. So you have mountain, button, our capital is Trenton, important. So it's sometimes you just gotta recognize how you talk that's weird, so that you can even change it up just a little. Like,
the thing is, it would be a different accent if I just started talking like button or mountain. It would be a very marked difference in that, you know? So, and you know, Google around. You know, I hear that like no one can do a true Irish accent like somebody with a genuine Irish accent. So, it's important. It's important to keep track of these things, and even if you can't make the accent yourself, being able to differentiate them is pretty cool. And one of the things that I'm gonna have to talk to Miche about is trying to do their accent, because they got that I believe she said Balkan accent, Croatian. Either way, it's like what I'm proud of is I can tell the difference between several British accents, several UK accents. So that's always some nice stuff. And I know that my Russian accent is probably really bad, and it sounds like, you know, cartoonishly Slavic, but it's still fun to do. So we have 4 minutes left, and in doing that, I'm going to do a few more of these to the end, since no one seems to have any questions or comments to make. So, let's see. Russian stump. 2 peasants used village tractor to remove big stump. First peasant said it was impossible for tractor to remove stump. Second peasant said it was first peasant lacked faith in great Soviet machinery, then put great effort in removing stump. Village tractor broke and peasants were sent to Gulag. Now without tractor and peasants, the village was doomed. 3 wheels. One day, great Soviet commissar come to village to see tractor. Tractor only 3 wheels. What happened? Inquires glorious leader. Great Soviet tractor strong, only needs 3 wheels, replied peasant. But comrade commissar, I cannot tell a lie. I use unnecessary tire to make shoes for village children. Commissar purged peasant in the Commissar purged peasant in the name of Great Stalin. Village children were sent to Gulag. Great Soviet Union don't need children with weak feet. One day, Soviet commissar... Oh, next is, Wait, is this the same one? Yeah, this is basically the same one. Bach. Yevdokia Monkey Paw. One day, Yevdokia is visited by traveler friend. Friend say, Donya, I find Monkey Paw with power to grant the 3 wishes, but I have all I want in communist utopia, so give paw to you for keeping. When friend leave, Yevdokia, being enemy of people and anarchist, decide to make wish. Testing paw. She say, Monkey paw, I wish for more food for myself, as she's selfish. The next day, KGB arrived to drag her son away for enemy collaboration. Now Yevdokia have more bread ration for herself. Anguished for her son, even though he betrayed a worker, she wished to paw again. Monkey paw, I wish to have my son return to me. The next day, KGB arrived with her son. Her son complied with KGB interrogation and returned to implicate mother. As KGB knock on door, Yevdokia grab Monkey Paw again and make final wish. Monkey Paw, I make mistake in previous wish. Please make him go away. KGB kick down door and destroy Monkey Paw. They say, your son says you worship monkey god. Religion is enemy of worker. Atheism is the only scientific truth. Yevdokia then sent to labor camps for where her dangerous superstitions could not infect loyal Soviet worker. She never see son of KGB again. Let's see. Oh, capitalist copy machine. Russian man is at work alone. Oh, sorry. Russian man is at work alone. Copy machine begins making copies. Man did not make copies. He goes to look. Copies show him dead at desk. He curses bad capitalist machines, shoots copier, and begins making all copies by hand. And I guess I'll do one more. It's 9 o'clock, top of the hour, about the end of the stream. One night I am in bed, beating my wife when phone ring. I beat phone, then pick it up. I hear voice. Voice says, What do you do with my daughter? I turn to wife and demand to know why her father interrupt me beating her. But she say her father is dead. Then KGB break into a house and arrest me for illegal possession of phone. Such is life in Moscow. And that's the end for today, guys. Our audience might be small, but I very much appreciate it. Thank you for joining me in today's solo cast. It's a little bit of a stressor trying to be the one talking through the entire thing and keeping up with things, but I hope that this was a good fill-in for the week. Next week we should have Miche back for usual shenanigans. And there you go. Hopefully it wasn't bad. So, thank you for joining me for the Sometimes Drunk podcast. I am Rebecca, and thank you. Goodbye.